At the beginning of this title, we spent a significant amount of time talking about anti-aliasing, but we were really focused on making sure that our artwork looked nice, clean, and sharp. However, perhaps even more importantly than the artwork itself, we have to ensure that our text is readable. And when we do save our text as an image instead of as text itself inside of a browser, we have to really be concerned about how that text is going to be anti-aliased as well, because sometimes that blurring of the edges can make the text unreadable. Now, here's the interesting thing, though, about working with text and about applying anti-aliasing. Each time that you set some text, there are different settings. There's different point sizes. You have some text that has very beautiful thick and thins, that has really nice serifs, and then you have other type that has other attributes inside of it. So each time that you set a word of text, it can really appear very different. So there's really not one magical setting that you can just say, snap to the pixel grid. We really need to treat each type object as its own entity, and we need to make sure that the anti-aliasing is going to look great. So what's really nice about Illustrator, and this is new to CS5, is that you have the ability to choose between a variety of different anti-aliasing methods, different technologies or algorithms about how basically the monitor goes ahead and rasterizes that text and applies the blurring or the anti-aliasing to the edges, and we can choose between them so that whatever looks best for the text that we have at the time is always going to look great. So let's see how that works. I'm going to focus right now on this document. It's called Monthly Specials. This is going to be kind of an ad banner, so there isn't going to be any text or any live editable text inside of this. It's simply going to be exported as a GIF or a JPEG. So I want to make sure that my text is going to look as good as possible. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my pixel preview is actually turned on, and I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit right here on this 250. Notice because my pixel preview is turned on, I can click on this text. Even though it's nice, clean, sharp vector text when I print it out on a printer, we know that when this gets rasterized, it's going to turn into little pixels, and I will have this anti-aliasing here. And you can see that around the edges here, it appears somewhat blurry. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead now and open up my character panel. A quick way to find that is right here inside of the control panel. Just click on the word character. And at the bottom, there's a setting here for anti-aliasing. Now, if we start kind of clicking on this pop-up here, we'll see that there are 4 different options for anti-aliasing inside of Illustrator. There's actually the ability to just turn off anti-aliasing altogether. If you choose none, then anti-aliasing does not apply to this text. It looks kind of blocky and chunky here. But in reality, sometimes when you have really small text, you don't want any anti-aliasing to be applied to it at all, because that way the blurring may make the text completely unreadable. So by disabling the anti-aliasing, by setting it to none, you're ensuring that that text is going to actually be readable, even though it might not look the greatest. Now, we can also choose several other anti-aliasing methods, though. The default setting is something called sharp, but you can also experiment with things called crisp and a setting here called strong. Now, again, there's no magic setting. There's no, one setting for everything. Every font that you choose, every point size that you're at is always going to look a little bit differently. So you want to make sure that when you're setting your graphics inside of Illustrator and you have text that you know is going to be exported as a graphic, you'll want to come here to the character panel and make sure that the correct anti-aliasing is set for that line of type. One thing to note, by the way, if you take your type tool and you go ahead and you kind of mouse over one of these characters, you'll see that you do not have the ability to have different anti-aliasing settings for each individual character. It's kind of a setting that applies to the entire type object as a whole. Now, there is one other important thing to note about using these settings here inside of Illustrator. You see, right now, Illustrator is letting us assign these settings now on the artboard. However, we need to ensure that Illustrator picks up these settings when this file is actually exported for whatever our needs are. So I'm actually going to switch now to my regular selection tool here. I'm going to choose Files, Save for Web, because maybe I now want to go ahead and export this art as a GIF or a JPEG, for example. Notice over here on the bottom where it says Image Size, there's a setting called Art Optimize. This refers to the different types of anti-aliasing that is applied to our artwork as we export it. However, because I've specified a different type of anti-aliasing for my artwork using the type settings inside of Illustrator, I need to also ensure that this pop-up is set to Type Optimized. This will actually now pick up the type settings that I've specified inside of Illustrator, specifically for the text itself, and allow me to now export my graphic with those settings intact.